it's a good initiative in terms. Affairs, ladies and gentlemen, and that I was the one still talking to Jennifer, the clerk, at the time when we did have quorum. And it's a welcome development, though, that we're here and ready to go, and so am I. And I do want to welcome the members of the public and others who are here this morning. For those who are in the room, the screen behind us here provides the real-time updates concerning where we are on the agenda and what's coming up next. And for those who are joining us online, you can follow the agenda, whether you're online here in the room or otherwise. You can follow it on www.toronto.ca/council. So it's time to begin, and I will begin as we would by asking the members of the committee if there are any declarations of interest that people wish to make under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. And if you have one, please indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Are there any declarations any members of the committee wish to make? Councillor Pasternak.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding operating and capital, as it relates to reference to line items in Toronto Public Library, as my spouse works for Toronto Public Library, be 6.12, 6.13, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Other declarations of interest under the Act? Seeing none, we would then proceed to review the agenda for today's meeting. And of course, if you wish to hold an item, please indicate your name and indicate which item you wish to hold. And we will, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to confirm our minutes of the Executive Committee meetings held on January 22nd, 2015 and March 2nd, 2015. Moved by Councillor Barton Reddy. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Oh, it said, had we not approved the January 22nd item, so that was not a mistake, so there's 3 to be done now.
Let's just do this one as well.
Okay, there's a third one to be done, which was April 22nd. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of April 22nd? Councillor Crawford, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, to the agenda, and let me just find my own. So if I can just go through the items and ask if you'll indicate if you wish to hold them. 6.1, Casa Loma. Councillor Ainslie to hold. 6.2, Lakeshore Arena Corporation. 6.3, Invest Toronto. 6.4, Toronto Hydro Corporation. 6.5, Toronto Portlands Company. 6.6, 2740 Lawrence Avenue East. It's being held for deputations. 6.7, Construction Association Consultation Group. Okay. 6.8, Affordable Housing Open Door, held by Councillor Bailão. 6.9, Submission to Affordable Housing Strategy Consultation. 6.10, Community Centre Settlement of Operating Results. 6.11, Arena Boards of Management 2013 Deficits and Surpluses. Where were we here? 6.12, Operating Variance Report. 6.13, Capital Variance Report. 6.14, Amendment to the Parks Budget, Capital Budget for Salem Parkette and Westmoreland Parkette. 6.15, Capital Budget Adjustments for Sustainable Energy. 6.16, Toronto Hydro Easement. 6.17, this one I'm going to hold because I'm going to move a referral back to the staff since we've just received a business case from Metrolinx about a whole bunch of grade separations, and I think it requires us to have staff assess those more specific plans. Within the context of that, also look at what they were doing on the, so I'll be moving, I'm moving that we refer this back to staff for further consideration and a further report later on to the Executive Committee. Pardon me? I'm happy to move that now. And is there any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.18. On this item, this is the item to, this is entitled Limiting the Liability of Employee Use of Uber. As you know, members will know that we've had a number of debates on the taxi cab industry, and we'll have more debates going forward. And we will have a fulsome debate at that time. And of course, in this case, it was set up to be at a time after the receipt of the decision in the court case and the analysis provided to us by the solicitor with regard to that court case. There's no question these things are all having an impact on the industry and on the public and service delivered to the public. But I don't believe today's the day to have that debate today, and I think we should revisit all of this at a time when the future of the industry can be taken as a whole. So I will be moving that this item be deferred indefinitely. And I do that in part as well at this point in time in the meeting out of courtesy to those who've come here to speak to the item today, because I think in all likelihood it will not end up being dealt with today, but I'm not being presumptuous about the result of the committee's deliberations on that. But I just don't want people to have to waste their time. So I'm moving deferral now, and I wonder if members are ready, as they were on the previous item, to have the question heard on that. Yes, Councillor Karygiannis? Well, that's fine then. So what we'll do is hold that down for the moment, and because no, but I think the clerk informed me that if he indicated a wish to speak on my motion, that he could.
Motion to defer indefinitely. If you'd like to speak to your motion to defer indefinitely, we can go into a deferral debate. You've moved it.
I have moved it, but then he can't. But he has the right to speak to it, does he not?
To the motion to defer.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes, on the motion to defer. So I can't call the question on the motion to defer, which is what I was going to do, but he put his hand up. Yes, so I was right. So we can, and you can speak to the motion to defer now if you wish. On deferral only. Yes.
On deferral. Mayor, this is about leadership, and it's about the democratic process. People have signed up to come today to speak. This is an item which is regarding the safety and well-being of our employees. We're asking our employees to use uninsured, unlicensed cabs, and the safety of our employees is paramount. And we, in this chamber, especially the executive committee, as employers of the employees, I think we need to move to protect them. So I urge you, sir, to really allow the democratic process to move forward and listen from the people that have to come to depute today, and we need to show leadership.
All right. Are there other? This is a motion to defer, not to cancel, not to refer, not to postpone. It's to defer, and so the democratic process will take its course another day at an appropriate time, as I indicated.
I would ask, Mayor, that you'll allow the members of the committee to vote.
right.
Either kill it or let it go back to council.
Thank you very much for those remarks. Are there others who wish to speak, or are we ready to call the question on the motion to defer indefinitely? All right. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Okay, and so for those who came to speak to that today, it won't be dealt with today. It will be dealt with sometime in due course, but it will not be dealt with today. And I do thank you for coming, and apologize if there was any inconvenience involved. Item 6.19. I think that there's a hold on that because there are some deputations on that. Item 6.20. Item 6.21.
On that one?
Yes, Councillor Menon-Wong.
Motion to defer indefinitely. 21, privatization, motion to defer indefinitely. This is a provincial matter, it shouldn't be here.
Deputy Mayor Menon-Wong moves indefinite deferral of the matter 6.21 concerning privatization of Hydro One. Are there people wishing to speak to the motion to defer? All right, then I'm ready to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Item 6.22. There's deputants on that. It's held for deputants. Item 6.23.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move and the item to be deferred indefinitely.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said there, Councillor.
To defer indefinitely or sine die. That's item 6.23.
And again, you want to move to adjourn at sine die or to defer at sine die?
Defer.
Okay, thank you. So this is item 6.23 on the tax assessment reforms.
What did we do with 22, Mr.
Very complex.
There are
There are depths on-
deputants.
Okay, thank you very much.
6.23, we have a motion from Councillor Palacio to defer 6.23 indefinitely. Is there any debate on the motion to defer?
I have a question of the mover. I'd just like to know why, because we do have a report on co-ownership coming back. We did ask planning to look in co-ownership models, and I would think this is one of the issues that they would be looking at, is also the taxation. Is that why you're moving? Or?
Well, Councilor Bailao, we do have a process in terms of impact, in terms of bringing forward, and any inconsistency, if any, in terms of co-ownership, this issue has been debated in the past,
So what you
2008, 2007, prior to it. So this has serious financial implications on the city, mainly on the tax assessment base, and the way the recommendations are written will
Okay.
affect that aspect.
So you think that because there is a report being worked on co-ownership models that most likely would address this, you think that we should defer this for now and allow the process to continue as it should through
Absolutely.
the committee?
Absolutely.
Anyone else wishing to speak to or ask questions on the motion to defer? Otherwise, I'll call the question on that. Councillor Palacio has moved deferral of this item 6.23, which was itself a request for a report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that completes our,
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
who was making the point of order? Sorry, I didn't.
I am right here.
Was it, oh, Councillor Thompson, sorry, yes.
Thanks. You mentioned that EX 6.6, that there were a deputy on that. I don't see a list, a person or persons here to speak on 6.6.
I may have misunderstood the clerk. There are no deputants, and so in
No,
which case,
and I'm willing to just move the recommendation.
I didn't actually hear anybody say anything on that, so I was the impression that wasn't held. But if you're saying that nobody's holding it and there are no deputants, then we can deem that
Right,
to
and
be.
staff are here. I'd like to have them go back to work.
Right. You'd like to offer them the opportunity to go back to work. Yes,
I can just move that.
indeed. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank
Yes.
you.
So then that will be adopted. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
All right, so does that take us back to,
Point of order.
I'm sorry, yes, Councillor Crawford.
Mr. Mayor, now we have all the items that were not held. We haven't voted on them yet. So
No.
I think the clerk may suggest that we need to vote on all the items we haven't held yet.
I think that's exactly what she was just about to suggest to me, and I was about to deal with that. We just wanted to go through the agenda, so now we can do exactly that. We just approved the one, plus the other ones that have been deferred. So we go back over them or deal with them
We have to do with them individually. So,
individually?
yeah.
All right,
we
so.
have 6.2, adopt.
All right, so that would take us through then a motion to approve the receipt of the, and the recommendations in 6.2 Lakeshore Arena. All those in favor, moved by Councillor Robinson. All those in favor, opposed, carried. 6.3 Invest Toronto. All those in favor, opposed, carried. 6.4 Toronto Hydro Annual Audited Statements and Report. All those in favor, opposed, carried. 6.5 Toronto Portlands Company 2014 Annual General Meeting and Audited Statements. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
6.9.
Well, we did 6.6, yes, just now. So we go over to 6.78. 9, the submission to the long-term affordable housing update. A motion to approve. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.10, community Senator's settlement of operating results for 2013, adopting the recommendations in the letter from the Budget Committee. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.11, RENA Boards of Management surpluses and deficits settlement. Move to approve. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.12, operating variance report for the year ended 2014. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 20, capital variance report for the year ended 2014, item 6.13. All those in favor? Please don't lose the energy to put your hands up so I can be sure. Thank you. Item 6.14, Parks Capital Budget Amendment for the Salem and Westmoreland. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.15, Capital Budget Adjustments for Sustainable Energy Plan. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 6.16, Toronto Hydro Easement. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
That's it.
And that's it for now. The rest we've either deferred or will be dealt with. What's that? Yeah. So that takes us then as our first item, the first that has deputants that will be heard from this morning, and that's 6.8, the Affordable Housing Open Door Initiative. And we have Ina Underwood from Habitat for Humanity here to address us. So please, Ms. Underwood, you're welcome, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you for coming.
In the Affordable Housing Committee and you as an executive committee for the focused attention that you're bringing to the challenge of affordable housing in our communities. Those of us in the affordable housing community have been tremendously energized and engaged and encouraged by the sense of resolve and commitment we've heard from this administration regarding the critical importance of housing and affordable housing to the well-being and the vitality of this city. Habitat for Humanity has been providing and advocating for affordable housing solutions in Toronto for over 25 years. And as I think you are aware, our unique model focuses on providing a bridge out of rental housing and enabling low-income families to achieve stability and improve health and well-being while building equity and financial security for their futures. And we're really pleased that the recommendations that are before you today in the April 27th letter from you as mayor has specifically recognized affordable ownership as part of the suite of affordable housing solutions needed by this city. And well, it should. A Boston Consulting Group study being released today examining habitat ownership in Canada and comparing it to a control group of similar families who remained in rental housing found a number of positive benefits. Habitat homeowners experience...
If I could just ask people to keep the side conversations to a minimum. We have a deputant here who's making some important comments about affordable housing. All the deputants are making important comments, but if I could just ask we could keep the side conversations. It's hard even for us here to hear because it's just, I don't know, something about this room. Please, Ms. Underwood, I'm sorry, carry on.
Thanks very much. And what I was explaining is there's been a, there's been a study that's been released today comparing the experience of Habitat homeowners in Canada versus other people in similar situations that have remained in rental, and it's demonstrated a number of really important benefits. One is above average increases in household income and in income security, reduced reliance on food banks and other social programs, improved health and health behaviors like decreased smoking, increased involvement in physical activity, improved educational outcomes for children, increased involvement in community volunteerism and in voting. And in short, the study found that for every $1 spent on a Habitat home, $4 of economic benefit are created for society. Many have said that in Canada, one of our great strengths is that in a generation, you can become middle class. Moreover, in Canada, and Toronto in particular, we are a model of pluralism and ethnocultural diversity, as well as income diversity. And ownership and equity are a huge part of what creates that diversity. We would do well to look at London, England, as a cautionary tale. A recent study found that in London, England today, 80% of new homeowners are homeowners because of parental and family support. Translation, if you are not born into the middle class, you will not be getting there. In Toronto, we must actively create avenues for families to move from poverty to economic stability. Home ownership is one critical plank in that strategy. If we don't create doors to home ownership, we will find ourselves facing an ever-widening divide between the haves and the have-nots, and no mobility between them. A March 2015 paper from the Brookings Institute demonstrated this correlation between rising home prices, decreased rates of home ownership, and widening economic and social inequality. It concluded that governments should support and enable programs that lead to increased mortgage access and construction of less expensive homes. In 2036, the population of the GTA will have 3 million more people than it does today. There's no question we will need more affordable housing of all types. There is no question we will need to increase the level of rental accommodations available. But similarly, if we don't in parallel address and create avenues to increase affordable ownership housing, we will find ourselves in a futile cycle, never being able to fully keep up for the demands of rental housing, and with the headlines no different from what we've experienced in recent years. The good news is you have great allies in this recognition of the importance of home ownership. One of them at your table, Anna Bailau, and many other members of her Affordable Housing Committee and other members of Council. Yesterday, we had a great meeting with Sean Gadden, Director of Affordable Housing Office, and Jennifer Keesmaat, also hearing very encouraging things about their ideas for moving us forward. So in short, we are here today really just to commend you as a council on your emphasis on affordable housing, to let you know we are with you and available 100% to support you in the work going forward. And I thank you for this time today.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. I gave you a few extra minutes on the clock there because we had a small interruption there with the hubbub in the room. Are there questions of the deputant by outside? Sure. Councillor Carroll, please.
So, hi. So you're deputing in favor of the actions that we're planning to go forward with. Are there examples? We're also dealing. We have standalone motions about inclusionary zoning, those sorts of measures that are big and broad and require the province to come along with us. Through Habitat for Humanity, do we now have good examples where you're working, where inclusionary zoning included providing ownership alternatives that are successes?
So off the top of my mind, Councillor Carroll, I can't give you an instant example. One of our developments out in the Lakeshore, as well as one in Scarborough, was a nice example of a mixed income housing. These are certainly the kind of developments that we would like to be involved in going forward. A number of months ago, I was at the Affordable Housing Committee endorsing a number of aspects of this motion, and the fact that we need to find ways to partner with the development community, the for-profit development community.
Right.
And so it certainly is my belief that finding enablers to create mixed income housing in projects that are bringing partners like Habitat, like Wood Green, like Options for Homes together with for-profit developers will advance the kind of neighborhood pluralism that I referred to earlier, that creates that kind of healthy city that we all want.
And partnership projects and, through policy, it's a negative word, but through policy, partnership projects that are sort of enforced through policy, you now have lots of capacity. And are you doing more of those than just you found your own site? You're doing partnership projects much more than the old conventional type of habitat projects?
We are certainly so we are gearing up towards many more of them in Toronto and in the surrounding areas that we're working in. And again, what is, I think, really encouraging and favorable about what's in front of Executive Committee today is the focus on how do we create those enablers that cause it to make sense, not just for Habitat, but for developers to make it worthwhile doing mid-rise, to make it worthwhile doing these kind of partnerships.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Other members of council from outside the committee to ask questions of the deputant? Anybody from the committee? Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming down. When it comes to Habitat for Humanity in Toronto proper, do you have any numbers on how many homes you actually set up in any given calendar year?
This year we have, by the end of the year, we will have had 30 homes underway in Toronto. We've had others underway in the surrounding regions.
Okay.
And again, a key thing, I think, is do we have the capacity to deliver more, or should we be gearing up to deliver more? Yes. And there's many things in the recommendations in front of you that would enable us to do so.
So can we say that you're establishing 30 households, new households a year? Is that?
I think I'd actually say, so 30 households in terms of 30 keys we put in hands of families for home ownership. But it's important to recognize every time we put a key in the hand of a Habitat homeowner, they are freeing up a affordable rental accommodation and making that available for another homeowner. About 56% of our families are actually coming from TCHC housing or on the wait list for TCHC housing. The other key thing, although you don't notice it in this, the year you put a key in the family's hands, is our history is most children of Habitat homeowners grow up to become homeowners themselves and are not accessing subsidized housing.
So when it comes to the wait list for Habitat for Humanity houses, how big a wait list are we looking at?
There's a lot of different answers I could give you to that question because there's a lot of different ways to measure it. At this point in time, we have about 95 approved families who have gone through the process and are waiting for a Habitat home. The number would be much bigger if we had an open application process at the moment, which we don't because we have not been able to build homes fast enough. I think you're familiar with the, if you use as a proxy the number of households on the wait list for affordable housing, that ranges up towards 90,000.
So in order to qualify, you would have to have some kind of stream of income to support the ongoing operating in a mortgage of sorts.
Yeah, in brief, qualifying for a Habitat home is based on 3 criteria. So one is need, so living in unaffordable, unsafe, crowded, unhealthy living conditions. The second is exactly what you've referred to, means. So we have income bands. Our families are families that wouldn't normally, that would not be able to qualify for a CMHC approved mortgage, but have a demonstrated income stream from at least the 3 years prior, so that while they haven't been able to put aside money for a down payment, they would be able to subsidize a modest mortgage, which we manage. The third criteria is the down payment itself. We use 500 hours of sweat equity in lieu of a cash down payment. So these are families who are working, they're holding a job, they're raising their kids, and they're making time to give a quarter of a year's work as their down payment for their home.
Who owns title to the home?
The family owns title once title transfers.
It is theirs.
Yeah, we sell the homes at full market value. We make it affordable by we manage the lease, but these are they own title, which is where the equity growth comes in for families.
And is there a tracking of defaults?
Sorry, yeah, there is a tracking of defaults, and in fact, in now 270 homes that we've sold to families in our history in Toronto alone, we have had 1 foreclosure. The track rate of Habitat families is extremely good. Similarly, in terms of families in arrears, we have 1% of our, 0.5 to 1% of our families are in arrears at any given time. If you checked with other lending institutions, you'd find that number is much lower than the average.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Councillor Pasnak. Other members of the committee wishing to question Ms. Underwood? I just have a couple of questions if there are no others. Ms. Underwood, first of all, two that have to do with general conditions in the marketplace and the item that you've very kindly come to speak on. Just on the question of land availability, if we were to be successful, and I'm using this opportunity again to call on the other governments to do what we're going to do, which is to make public lands available like 200 Madison as quickly as we can for affordable housing purposes, either rental or ownership. Do you think there is the interest out there on the part of organizations like yours and the private development community to match the availability of land? Let's assume we're successful and the governments come forward as they should and say we have these pieces of land that we can put out for RFP, as it were. Do you think there's the interest out there on the part of the, I'll call it the nonprofit sector and the profit sector, to actually take advantage of that?
Yes, I do. My opening comment, you'll recall, was about just how encouraged we are about the energy there, and I ended by talking about allies. I neglected to mention the amount of time we spend talking to partners in the development sector and to the Building Industry Land Development Association. Speaking of build specifically, they are recognizing that in order to have affordability throughout the entire spectrum, affordability of ownership is itself a stepladder. And so having partnerships with an organization like Habitat for that kind of entry-level ownership, as well as doing back to the mixed use, then having another tiered level of ownership in the same development is something that there's been a lot of interest about. The key thing, and I mean, you've heard a lot about this from the Ontario Home Builders Association and others, there are a lot of inadvertent disincentives now for the development community to actively participate in the low and kind of low-middle income entry end of housing in Toronto. So again, what we like about what we see in the recommendations and in the kind of ideas that are coming out of the Affordable Housing Office and planning, et cetera, is there's the recognition of a lot of solutions there. The challenge for you and your council will be having the will ultimately to very purposefully act on them.
I'll take a minute off, by the way, my own time, so that's a minute and 29 because I forgot to reset the clock. Second question I wanted to ask you was about awareness. One of the things I find myself having to do, and I guess realized this when I came to public office, is explain to people in a careful way what the difference is between affordable housing, ownership or rental, and what I'll call public housing or social housing, and if you follow the TCC, for example. Do you have any ideas or thoughts you might offer to us, and by us I mean the members of council, Mr. Gadden and all his hard work and so on, as to how we can sort of raise that level of information and awareness about the difference? Because I'm not sure sometimes people, when they just hear the discussion going on, aren't sort of putting the two together into one. And I think there is a profound difference, and a profound difference in the reason, why you have both. Have you any advice for us on that?
I don't have a good enough answer for you off the top of my head, so I am going to take that away and give it some thought and get back to your office in writing with something more thoughtful. What I would say is, when I think specifically about what we do with Habitat, I compare it to, my own family's life and any of our lives around the table. We are all where we are because of circumstances, and a lot of those circumstances have been created by someone opening a door or someone giving us a hand up. Every step along our affordable housing spectrum should have in mind that notion of opening a door and giving a hand up and creating possibilities for people. There was a study, I can't remember which polling firm it was, a couple of years ago, of Canadians, of attitudes towards poverty, and it found that 57% of Canadians recognize that poverty is a function of circumstances. So the reality is, most of our citizens recognize this is about circumstances. And so when we're talking about affordable housing, we are creating opportunities for people to move beyond circumstances, just as each of us has done at some point in our lives.
Thank you for your offer to come back with some advice on that, because I think it is something where I find it's a big challenge for us to explain why this is important in the context of working people being able to live in the city close to their jobs and so on. Final question is on a slightly different, more specific to Habitat for Humanity. We had before us, I think last month, a project, and I was very proud of it, although I can take no credit because the work happened before I was here, but a project which included a number of affordable housing, homeownership units in it that I think Habitat are going to deliver. And the question that I asked at the time I read the report, I was heartened by it, was how does Habitat go about selecting the people, and do you make any reference to or make any inquiries of this list that you made reference to earlier on of all the people that are on our list that are waiting in selecting the people that will get to, for example, participate in those Habitat for Humanity units that you're going to help us manage in, I think it's on Ordnance Street or somewhere like that? Could you just tell us a bit about that?
How we go about selecting?
Yes.
So I think the first thing is, how do we create awareness? So we work through multiple avenues. We work through TCHC, we work through Housing Connections, we work through faith communities, et cetera, just so people are aware when an opportunity comes up. I referred in responding to Councillor Pasternak's questions about the criteria we use, but I think the other thing a lot of people don't realize is the actual selection it's a citizen selection. So our family service panels are volunteers from the community who do a very thorough review of these applications. They go, they visit the families, they interview the families. Obviously, there's a thorough review of the financials, which I talked about earlier. And so that's the second piece of it. The question I think that you're also getting at is, you know, do we look at kind of existing wait lists, et cetera? So historically, it has been a function of we've looked at the applications on just their merit, irrespective of where it might lead with wait lists. To use an example, I've previously had conversations with Wood Green or with TCHC and saying, you know, if we partner with you on land, it's totally fair game for you to say, and we would like preference to be given on selection to, let's use Wood Green, to women that are coming out of the Homeward Bound program, or TCHC, to people who are trying to move out of a TCHC housing into other. So it's not something we've done historically. I think it's absolutely an appropriate question to ask going forward. Did I
Yes, you
answer
did.
what was on your
And
mind?
I think it's up to us then to be mindful of your last comment about deals that we might be involved in, where we could say we'd like to have our lists looked at if we're involved, say, with TCHC.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for that. Other questions, anybody? Yes, Councillor Palacio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Underwood, for the amazing work that you are doing all throughout the city. I'm a great supporter, and actually we have a couple developments in my ward as well. Now, with regards to your comments you mentioned about the full market value that's assigned to a property that's sold to a family, for example, do you mind just to explain the market value, the full market value?
And I'm sorry, I didn't fully hear your
full
question. Can you just
The full
repeat
market
it?
value, you made comments in terms of the full market value and to a property that's sold, let's say, to a family need.
Sorry, so what's the, try
The
again.
full market value?
Market value.
The full market value, especially in terms of the number of years of amortization, the terms of mortgage.
Okay.
And
So a couple of things. When we complete a home, we have it independently appraised. So that's how, when I say we sell it at full market value, we have it independently appraised. That becomes the value we are selling the home for in the agreement of purchase and sale. Our mortgage model actually is changing as of 2015. So I'm going to speak about the mortgage model that next families up are actually in Councillor Thompson's ward. So the families in his ward will have the following mortgage model. It is a 20-year fixed term model. It is zero, you heard about the zero down payment. It is zero interest. The payments are calibrated every year. They're calibrated based on the household income of the family in the year that's just finished. So we receive the notice of assessment from the family that they receive from Revenue Canada, and it's based on 30% of household income going to shelter. So we take that 30%, less property taxes, less half of condo fees if we set it up as a condo, and household insurance. Whatever is remaining is what their mortgage payment is. And so in the next year, if their income goes up, their mortgage payments go up. If their income goes down, their mortgage payments go down. At the end of 20 years, if there is still principal owing, that is the amount paid to be paid back to Habitat by the family is calculated based on the value of the home at 20 years and the proportion of the equity that they have now invested in the home.
if the composition of the family changes for whatever reason, or the level of affordability in terms of income changes, and there is a decision to sell the property, how does it work in terms of second mortgages or first mortgages or whatever investment that's being facilitated?
Yeah. So if a family decides to sell for personal reasons, because they're moving, whatever, anytime, between when they own the home and 20 years later, the math is really the same. We have the first right of refusal to buy the home, but if the home is sold on the market, then the family pays Habitat out of any remaining, of basically Habitat's remaining share of any of the equity that hasn't already been paid off. So the family realizes the equity from their investment over that period of years, and Habitat realizes the remainder. So there's no, the family, just as you or I, is free to sell their home at any point during the mortgage period.
Thank you. My last question is, in terms of zoning, let's say the zoning is there to allow for residential, but in spite of the availability of the lands, if the lands are contaminated, is Habitat for Humanity would still have an interest on it? And I'm referring to a location that it was in my own ward that I offered to Habitat for Humanity, and it was a great parcel of land. Unfortunately, the lands became contaminated, and so Habitat walked away. And I'm thinking now citywide, as we are trying to create the availability of lands all throughout. Is that a concern to you?
So I'm concerned I haven't sufficiently understood your question to answer it. So if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do is we can follow up with you in your office to make sure we are giving you a full answer for this.
I'll be glad to. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palacio. Other questions of the deputant by members of the committee? If not, Ms. Underwood, thank you very much. It's very thoughtful and helpful to us, and thank you for the work that Habitat does. It's very welcome and necessary in the community. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you all. We do it with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff. I have just going to use a bit of the chair's latitude here because there may be others outside of the committee, but Councillor Pasternak had a desire to slip out for a minute and just wanted to be able to question staff first on this item, so I'll ask him if he'd like to ask his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, there's a reference in the staff report about rent supplement agreements. As far as the level of rent supplement agreements, has it been holding fairly steady in recent years, or is there a give and a take on the numbers? Where are we at with that?
Through the chair, I can report that the rent supplement program essentially is sort of in a steady state, if you could say that. The province did, with the federal government, though, create a affordable affordable program through the investment in affordable housing, and council has set aside about half of that money between now and 2020, essentially for housing allowances to individuals that would qualify. And so there is a housing allowance program that has been introduced.
Now, housing allowances are different from rent supplements, is that?
The housing allowance...
But you can use it as a joint pool, is that correct?
Well, the housing allowance program is essentially to the individual, so they can find the accommodation, and it provides a fixed payment of between $250 to $400 to assist that household, but is not indexed by inflation. A rent supplement is essentially guarantees that the resident would be paying 30% of their income on housing.
Now, the rent supplement is an agreement, an executed agreement between our housing office and a private sector building owner. Is that correct? Which allows units within a private building to be below market rent.
It has that feature. Rent supplements, though, are quite common also within social housing, nonprofit housing. But there is an element of it which involves a contract with a private landlord who has units and makes those available on a rent geared to income basis to a resident. So that's really the essential difference, is a rent supplement is a rent geared to income at 30% as opposed to a housing allowance, which is essentially a stipend to assist the household in affording rent.
Are those segregated funds, or can funds be moved back and forth between those two envelopes? Is that one big pool of money, or are those segregated that can only be used for certain policies governing those two?
It depends, in particular, what program you're speaking of, Councillor. The historic legacy programs essentially are set. The funding that came through the investment in affordable housing program through to 2020 There is program design that is taking place within shelter housing and support with respect to those funds. The majority of those funds have been designated for housing allowances, but I understand there are some rent supplements in some circumstances.
So in other words, there's elasticity in the policy that they can be moved back and forth depending on the circumstance. It's a discretionary.
I guess what I'm saying is, just to be clear, is that there are decisions the city is making with respect to those. I wouldn't say they're elastic in the sense that once you've committed to a household for a housing allowance of 5 to 10 years, you're committed to that housing allowance. You're not going to find yourself in a situation of withdrawing it and turning it into a rent supplement.
Okay, so let's cut to the chase. So when it comes to rent supplement agreements, have they been holding steady in recent years? And is the reserve strong enough to grow it?
The rent supplements have been holding steady. We are faced with a situation, though, with the expiry of operating agreements with nonprofit organizations and cooperatives of those rent supplement, those federal agreements expiring, and as a result, over time, they will decline. This is a very significant issue going forward relative to the amount of need for both housing allowance and rent supplements, and the amount of, and the shortage of money, frankly, that's coming from the federal and provincial governments to meet that need.
I'm told by finance that the reserve is pretty healthy, and that we could add to it if there's a direction from council to do so. Would that be your opinion as well?
I'm going to let Glenn Morgan, who's in shelter housing and support, he's here, answer that question for you.
Through the chair, the reserve stabilizes all operations, not just the rent supplements. It allows us to fund our legislative requirements for RGI rent supplements and also paying TCHC its subsidy for residual. Right now, the beginning balance is around 50 million. We're budgeted for a draw of roughly 25. So we have probably enough to get us through beyond 2016, but I don't think I would categorize it as stable. I think it is, it's fine for now, but I wouldn't go dipping into it for other reasons.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pasternak, and thank you to
Thank you.
staff. Other members of the committee wishing, oh, I'm sorry, yes, we're going back. You're quite correct, and I thought you might have your hand up. Councillor Carroll.
So at first I was frustrated with Councillor Pasternak's questions, but he actually got there in the end, talking about the cascading problem when we go to fix other problems by backstopping it with rent supplements. There's a cascading problem happening in terms of providing affordable rental and then rent supplements. And so the recommendations regarding being ready to act if we get funds for rental housing there. But I'm taken back to the deputant's remarks. Do we have a policy around wanting a certain amount of, a certain mix of affordable ownership? Or are we simply reactive, waiting for a possible Habitat partnership to come forward? Do we have actual mixed goals?
Councillor, as is indicated in the letter from the mayor and the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee, we have goals. We have 1,000 new rental units a year that the city is intending to create and 200 home ownership.
And while it would be anecdotal, do we track simply shelter and housing needs, or do we track what percentage of our population that is in a housing crunch might be a potential affordable ownership participant? Do we track that in any way? Is it possible?
The city tracks demand for rental housing essentially through the waiting list, which we've
Right.
been reminded this morning is over 90,000 households. The waiting list for affordable home ownership is kept by the organizations that run those programs. And I will
Okay.
say to you, I frankly would be challenged to create, given the fact that we are unable to service the demand that would come from an affordable home ownership list.
You see where I'm going, though. While people come forward saying, I need housing, and they end up on a rental list, no one comes forward and says, I need to own a home, and I don't know how I'm going to do it. That doesn't come to us. So do we find out what the need is from the not-for-profit agencies and, you know, Habitat Chief among them, but do we try and track by regular conversations so that when we're asking of governments, we'll be asking about ownership as well?
Absolutely, Councillor. And just to remind you that through one of the programs operated through the city, there is a down payment assistance program of up to 10% of an affordable home delivered by one of the city's agencies that we work with, whether it be Habitat for Humanity, Options for Homes, Artscape, what have you.
So I've been here for 12 years and I didn't know that. What are we doing to promote that?
It's on the website.
I'm wondering how hard it is to find on the website, because I did not know that, and I've been on that website. I'm going to go have a look.
All set then, Councillor Carroll? You're going to have a look, and you have more, or you're just looking and then maybe? Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm sure of that. Other members from, not members of the committee, members of council who wish to ask questions of staff, members of the committee who wish to ask questions of staff anymore? All right. Speakers from outside of the committee, members from outside who wish to speak to this matter? All right. Members of the committee who wish to speak. Yes, Councillor Pasternak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is actually very encouraging to see this before us because I guess as someone who's been here just 4.5 years, enormous frustration in getting some of these initiatives going. When you look at the amount of vacant city-owned land in Ward 10, up in the Wilson and Allen Road area, and of course up in the Allen Road and Shepherd area, a 55-acre parcel undeveloped in and around the Downsview Station, and undeveloped lands in and around Wilson Heights and Wilson. You really wonder, and we've been working on it for years and years to get something going. When I see some kind of a framework in which there's pressure on staff to make it happen faster, to cut through the red tape, to reach out and get our various city agencies and our private sector partners working on this is very encouraging. If anyone's heard the discussion from me over the years when it comes to the affordable housing piece, I'm an extreme fan of rent supplement agreements. Rent supplement agreements allow the city to work with private sector partners to allow people to live in regular apartment buildings, in our case in Ward 10, and to live in the communities that they're comfortable with, where their kids go to school, and to make sure that they're able to afford it. Also, with rent supplement agreements, we are not waiting on a major capital pool to build new buildings, which may or may not ever come. We need, with this program, a new flexibility, a new portability, less rigidity, less regulation when it comes to our rent supplement agreements. We can solve many of our most severe housing issues with this. And it's a proven model in many of the success stories that we have here in the city, but also it's a proven model in south of the border in the United States, where the quick portability of rent supplement agreements prevents families and individuals from years and years of frustration of waiting for a unit which in a TCHC building which will probably never come. So I believe that, and staff know I've been asking more and more questions as a member of the Budget Committee and as chair of the Standing Committee that looks after this in part. We will be asking tougher and tougher questions on why there is a regular denial of these, of the execution of these agreements, even though we have very enthusiastic landlords and building managers who are interested in pursuing them. And a repeated story from some staff that we don't have the money, even though our reserves demonstrate that there is that kind of elasticity between housing allowances and rent supplements, and there is a surplus variance. Carrying forward unused rent supplements is problematic, from I understand, from a policy point of view, and that's something that we should be fixing in the future. I can assure you that from what I've seen, and I meet with almost every social housing applicant in Ward 10. In fact, many come to me who don't even live in Ward 10 because they know we'll meet, we'll listen, we'll do everything we can, that the rent supplement agreement and the housing allowances provide for us the greatest opportunity to address, to respond, and to manage many of our affordable housing challenges. And with that, I am encouraged that this piece, and I thank the Affordable Housing Committee, I thank Councillor Ballo for bringing this forward. I hope that this can translate into actual policy on the ground to make it happen, and I think you'll see a big difference in our wide range of communities.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. Other members of the committee to speak to this matter? Councillor Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. I think that if we have this in front of us today, it's not like a lot of us didn't have the will to put it forward a few years ago, but we definitely did not have a mayor that led the charge on affordable housing like you're doing, and so I think we need to commend you for that, and I certainly appreciate all the support on this file. What we have here in front of us is a set of recommendations that challenges our private and nonprofit sector. We have done a lot on the affordable housing. There's much more to do. We have a housing crisis in our city. And when we look at housing and housing affordability, we need to look at it as a housing spectrum. We've addressed shelters in our budget. We've addressed some of the issues that the shelters are facing. We're tackling the TCHE through the special task force, through refinancing of mortgages, but we know that we still have 90,000 people on a waiting list. And we needed to challenge them with the tools that we have, and the tools that we have are land, the tools that we have are planning tools and making sure that the process is done in a faster and more efficient way. I was talking with some developers the other day, and they're saying, we love this idea of having a SWAT team at City Hall that is going to push forward the affordable housing file, and that's exactly what we need. We're fortunate enough that we have a group of leaders at staff that understand that are ready to roll up their sleeves, because the reality is we have lots of housing being built in the City of Toronto. But the kind of housing that we really need, and what we really need to make sure is that we create the affordability in the housing that is being built. And that's why they should be given priority. Ensuring that we have the SWAT team moving forward, and the clerk is looking at me because I do have a motion. And I do have a motion exactly because since the moment the mayor made his announcement, we've had lots of interest from the private and nonprofit sector. And so we wanted to give the opportunity from now to October to have the staff looking at these projects that are coming our way, and if there's anything that is shovel-ready that we can put in front of the executive committee, bring it forward. Let's work with the private and nonprofit sector to make sure that we have more and more housing being built. I just wanted to address some of the comments on also how we're delivering this. As you know, we are centralizing the waiting list. We are creating an online portal to make sure that we are giving Torontonians, independently of what kind of housing they need, because at certain points in their lives they might need different kinds of housing. But there is a central focus in the city to assist people with their housing needs. So through an online portal that is going to support residents and our online physical centers and online help centers that we have, through a centralized waiting list that we're now creating in the City of Toronto, and through different models of approaching the housing spectrum, we're hoping that we're going to put a dent in this housing crisis. But we definitely need our private and nonprofit sectors, and that's what we're doing here. We're opening the doors. That's why we're calling it an open door. We're opening the doors. We're rolling the red carpet, and we're saying you have priority in this city. That's the kind of housing that needs to be given priority. We are in the business of facilitating the building of affordable housing, and that's what we're here today approving, and I hope that we get an unanimous approval on this report.
And you had a motion to put.
I did.
Oh, you did you put it?
I did.
Okay,
I said
that's
I had a
fine.
motion to allow
Thank you
these
very much.
projects to come
I
forward.
heard you make reference to it, and I didn't realize you'd actually put it. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank, sorry, one more thing, our staff, and I know that planning and the Affordable Housing Office and the Deputy City Manager, everybody's excited to get this program going, so we're really looking forward to have this coming back in the fall, and we're looking forward to the many projects that are already in the pipeline to get affordable housing built in the city.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Other members of the committee wishing to speak? If not, I will just say a word, which is a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Barlow and the staff for helping to move this forward. I don't think it is an overstatement to say that we have a crisis in the city, and I think the comments Ms. Underwood made this morning, underline, even some of them in reference to other cities, the reality that there are increasing numbers of people who find themselves foreclosed from living in the city, or foreclosed from owning in the city, or even renting. And that there's something that has to be done about this. And I guess I want to make 2 points only. One is to reiterate, because every chance you get, I think we should reiterate the fact that we need the other governments to step forward. And I understand temporarily, or at least in the short term, while we keep at it, that they may not have any money at this moment. I'm hopeful that's going to change going forward as we keep at them on this, but they do have land. Those other 2 governments have lots of land, and their agencies have lots of land, as we do, and that we find the opportunity on the part of ourselves and those other governments to make some of that land available. We made that request to them on the day we stood at 200 Madison Avenue and said that that piece of land, which had been available for 10 years for affordable housing, was finally going to move forward. And I'm pleased to tell you that RFP is sort of happening as we speak. So I'm asking those governments again, those other 2 governments, to look at their land inventory and to look hard with the view to saying we can put this land up, because it has a value, a significant value. And the second thing is to say to the private sector and the nonprofit sector, as did Councillor Barlow, we need you to take 200 Madison and assorted other places we find in the course of searching for this land, and to come forward with your creative proposals and participate in these RFPs. And then finally, pardon me, I want to put on notice people within our own city agencies over time, and I think Councillor Thompson and others, Councillor Shiner, will be familiar with this. Some of our own agencies with pieces of land they own have chosen to make excuses or find reasons as to why it's very complicated and you don't understand, we own this, and and so on. The fact is, these are owned by the public. They are owned by Toronto agencies. They could be made available, and in some cases should be made available for affordable housing, but boards of commission, boards of directors, others, and I understand they have their job to do, have found reason over time, probably aided and abetted by others they work with, not to do so. And I'm going to try to sort of keep at that. I can't instruct them in many cases to do anything because my job doesn't permit that, but I'm certainly going to make their lives more eventful in terms of finding reasons to do this as opposed to finding reasons not to do it. So those are my comments. And are there any other members of the committee wishing to speak? I saw none. All right, then. I think on that basis, we're willing to, we're ready to move rather to the amendment first to the item moved by Councillor Barlow. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed, if any? Carried. Moving then to the vote on the main item. All those in a recorded vote on the main item.
All those in favor of adopting the item as amended? Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Bailão, Councillor Berardinetti, Councillor Crawford, Councillor DeGiorgio, Councillor McMahon, Deputy Mayor Minnan-Wong, Mayor Tory, Councillor Palacio, Councillor Pasternak, and Councillor Thompson. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Councillor Layton wished to vote for it if he could have. It's duly noted. Duly noted. All right. Thank you very much. Now, let's go back to our The next item that had deputants was item 6.19? 6.19. And so we have 6 deputants to be heard there. And the first is Mr. John Sharkey. Is Mr. Sharkey here? All right, Mr. Sharkey is not here at the moment. Next would be Dr. Faisal Mullah from the Faculty of Forestry at the U of T. Good morning, Dr. Mullah. Thank you very much for coming. You have 5 minutes, and you're most welcome.
Dear Mayor Tory and members of the Executive Council, I thank you for the opportunity to address you today in support of Councillor Mike Layton's motion MM 6.2 that Toronto officially recognize the rights of its residents to live in a healthy environment. My name is Faisal Mullah. I'm the Director General for Ontario and Northern Canada with the David Suzuki Foundation and an adjunct professor of forestry at the University of Toronto. The inextricable link between environmental and human health is now widely recognized. Recent polling has shown that 9 out of 10 Canadians are concerned about the impact of environmental degradation on their health and the health of their children, and with good reason. Toronto's air is cleaner today than it has ever been, thanks to strong action taken by governments, including the City of Toronto, to curb air pollution, such as closing coal-fired electricity plants by the province and the success of automobile emissions testing with the Drive Clean program. But despite a substantial drop in premature deaths and hospitalizations, a recent Toronto public health study concluded that too many residents are still being hospitalized and in some cases dying from poor air quality. According to Dr. David McEwen, the city's medical health officer, about 1,300 premature deaths and 3,500 hospitalizations stem from air pollution in Toronto annually. Clearly, the state of our local environment has a tremendous influence on the health and well-being of our communities and our families here in Toronto. Municipal governments like the City of Toronto make decisions that affect transportation, housing density, waste disposal, and other issues related to the quality of our local environment every day. Local governments also have the power to pass bylaws to protect residents from environmental harm, as well as incentivize the adoption of new technologies like green roofs that not only helped us to better cope and adapt with climate change through managing stormwater runoff better, but they support employment and innovation in our economy as well. Indeed, Toronto is renowned worldwide for our ambitious green roof policy, as well as our spectacular urban forest. A municipal declaration recognizing the right to a healthy environment which shows support for Toronto's residents' rights to clean air, water, and safe food. By adopting this resolution, we would join over 50 municipalities across Canada, from large cities like Vancouver, Montreal, Richmond Hill, Ajax, as well as small towns like Ucluelet and Tofino, who have passed similar resolutions that recognize their citizens' right to live in a healthy environment. In the United States, over 150 local governments have passed ordinances that recognize citizens' right to live in a healthy environment and protect them from a range of harmful practices. These rights protect clean air, drinking water, consuming safe food, accessing nature, knowing about pollutants and contaminants released in the local environment. In addition to action by local governments, over 100 national governments around the planet have now enshrined either the rights or responsibilities around the environment in their own constitutions, such as Argentina and France. The David Suzuki Foundation and over 75,000 Canadians that have now signed petitions or wrote letters to their local politicians urge you to recognize the rights of the residents of Toronto to live in a healthy environment by adopting Councillor Layton's motion. This motion is based on a standardized text that the David Suzuki Foundation and our supporters have advanced with municipalities across the country and has now been adopted by 52 communities from small towns to large cities, as I said, Vancouver, Montreal, as well as emerging new cities like Richmond Hill. The motion has been reviewed by legal departments in a number of municipalities, such as the City of Victoria, who have concluded that the resolution does not bind cities financially or impact the existing work of city communities and divisions. Councillor Mike Layton has had the City Clerk in Toronto review the text, and staff have also spoken to the legal departments of other municipalities that have already passed the resolution. Thus, we don't believe it needs to be referred to City staff for further review, and it's our hope that Councillor Layton's motion will receive the support of the Mayor and the Executive Committee today. To conclude, most of us intuitively understand that the environment is a key factor to sustaining healthy communities. Environmental rights support many issues that Torontonians care about: healthy land, food, development, water and air quality, climate change, habitat and biodiversity, parks creations, as well as incentivizing children's access to nature and much, much more. Yet Canada lacks important legal protection for environmental rights. All levels of government must take action to address this oversight. Municipal adoption of a declaration respecting all residents' right to live in a healthy environment will set an important precedent that can inspire action at other levels of government, ultimately resulting in better environmental performance and a healthier population in Canada writ large. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mula. Are there questions of the deputant from first members outside of the committee? Yes, Councillor Layton.
This will just be very quick. I have two questions. How many other municipalities have passed this same resolution?
52 as of today.
And the language in this in the resolution that's presented here today is consistent with the other 52 municipalities?
Pretty much exact, yes.
Thank you.
Other members outside of the committee who wish to ask questions of the deputant? Members of the committee. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So 52 municipalities. How many in Canada, did you say?
So 52 in Canada.
In Canada, okay. And in Ontario?
There would be 5 now in
Five?
Ontario, including at least 4 in the GTHA. Richmond Hill, Ajax, King, Hamilton.
And their city legal departments were fine with the wording?
Yeah.
Exact same wording?
Yeah.
All right. And were they adopted unanimously? Do you
In
know?
most cases, they have been adopted unanimously, yes.
Okay. And we were mentioning air quality, and my numbers are out of date probably from my former life as the eco-witch of the East activist. How many Torontonians are now dying annually from air quality-related deaths?
Sure.
It used to be 18.
Yes, so Dr. McEwen released a study to the City Council called Path to Healthy Air Study that was released in 2014. Dr. McEwen has found that reductions in air pollution over the last decade by the city have cut premature deaths by 23% and hospitalizations by 41%. However, I'm going to quote here. He said, most of the air pollution is generated inside of the city limits. About half is coming from cars and trucks on our roads. If we want to tackle the burden of illness, we have to tackle the emissions predominantly from vehicles. And the exact numbers, in terms of what he estimated, was that there are 1,300 premature deaths, 3,550 hospitalizations that stem from air pollution annually in Toronto.
And who is most affected by?
It's our most vulnerable residents. It's our elders, it's our children. It's about people that have, in some cases, predisposing problems like respiratory diseases or asthma, who are, in some cases, in acute distress as a consequence of air pollution on particularly bad days, like a smog day.
Okay, and the 5 municipalities in Ontario do you know if our city legal has spoken to them?
I have put city staff in touch with the names of those people. I don't know if they've actually
Okay.
spoken to them or not.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other members of the committee wish to ask some questions of this deputy. I'd like to ask some if there are no other questions. Could I just ask you, Dr. Mula, are you aware of any other cities, when they put these through, the cities you were referring to, I think you said 52, whether they would have done it without a reference to the staff, for example, to get comments on these provisions? I understand you're saying exactly the same words were passed, but are you aware of any that would have done it where they wouldn't have had comments from the staff as to degrees to which this language would be inconsistent with existing policy or duplicative?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question now, but I'd be more than happy to give you that information later this afternoon.
Would you think it would be wise, for example, when it comes to say something like, if you look at item 4 that you're speaking to, of this item you're speaking to, that City Council carry on with their work and revise targets on, say, equitable distribution of environmental benefits and burdens, or reducing solid waste, to consult our staff to determine consistency with or conflict with other policies that we already have in place?
I don't think so. I have spoken to your staff, and your staff have actually identified that many of these issues are already being addressed by the city in committees and such. This is simply a description of the sound environmental management that's going on in the city. I want to be clear. This is an aspirational document. This is essentially the city recognizing, along with dozens of communities across the country, that living in a healthy environment is something that is important to all of us. It also sets a standard that I think can hold us accountable when we make decisions about how we grow and manage our city. And there's no question about it. I've looked at the city very carefully. Toronto is a leader when it comes to the environment, be it the green roof policy, be it our incredible urban forest, given the commitments that you have made and council have made around addressing congestion, for example, through investments in transit. But I think what this does is that it essentially sets a very strong message to the residents of the city that we care about the state of the environment and that we're willing to do better. As Councillor Margaret McMahon mentioned, it's unacceptable that children and the elderly continue to get sick as a consequence of air pollution from congestion.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time here today. That would bring us next to Mr. Franz Hartmann, Toronto Environmental Alliance. Hello, Mr. Hartmann. Welcome, and you have 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you very much. My name is Franz Hartmann. I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Environmental Alliance. We have over 50,000 supporters in all 4 corners of the city, and as many of you know, we have been advocating for a greener city for now, I guess it's 27 years. We are here speaking in support of adopting this motion. As Dr. Mula outlined, there are many, many reasons to adopt this aspirational recommendation. It's been done elsewhere. It essentially just states in recommendation 4 in particular, states at a very high level work that is already going on at the city. I want to give you another reason for adopting this by doing a bit of a thought experiment. Imagine if the recommendation substituted the word environment and economy. So it would read something like, City Council formally recognized that people are part of the economy and that a healthy economy is inextricably linked to the well-being of our communities. In doing so, the city declares that all people have the right to live in a healthy economy, including the right to make a profit, the right to work for a living, the right to spend their money, the right to private property, etc. And recommendation 2 would be City Council recognize its responsibility to respect, fulfill, protect, and promote these rights, and that where threats to serious irreversible damage to the economy exist, the city shall take cost-effective measures to prevent the degradation of the economy, etc. And 3 would be the City Council direct the city manager to include economic impacts when evaluating reasonable, foreseeable thoughts, etc. And the final recommendation would be City Council and its committees continue to work with residents and other experts to set specific objectives, targets, timelines, and actions that the city will take within its jurisdiction to fulfill residents' rights to a healthy economy and continue to review and revise these targets, which include, and then in this thought experiment, all of the activities that the city is undertaking to make sure that the economy is healthy. You get the point. Like my thought experiment, the motion in front of you is stating the obvious. It's non-controversial, it's aspirational, and it creates no additional commitments. It recognizes where the city is a leader in environmental issues, and it doesn't take the city or commit the city beyond what already exists. It's bluntly as safe as agreeing to the comment that apple pie is tasty. I really do hope that this committee will agree to this and send it off to council. If there is some sort of concern, perhaps between now and the time it goes to council, staff could bring a report forward. But if the committee does defer this, I urge the committee to direct staff to report back within a short number of months on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hartmann. Questions by members, not members of the committee, who wish to ask Mr. Hartmann any questions? All right. Questions on the part of members of the committee. Do I see Councillor DeGiorgio with his hand up?
Mr. Hartmann, if I understand you correctly, you believe that...
Excuse me, Councillor, there's just a little bit of that buzz setting into the room that makes it hard to hear, and if people could keep that to a minimum, that'd be great. Sorry, Councillor, go ahead.
Yeah, well, my question is, if I understand you correctly, you believe that the environmental factor as it affects the economy, along with other factors that may affect the economy, are not in any conflict whatsoever, that in fact they're all synergistic. that no matter what factor you consider as being helpful to a healthy environment for people, they're not in conflict in any way?
That's a very important question, Councillor, and I'll try to do justice in a short period of time in that. There are always there will always be instances where what's good for the environment may not be good for specific players in the economy. For example, 50 years ago, for those of you who watch Mad Men, you'll understand this illusion. Everybody was smoking. You didn't think twice about that. Tobacco industry was out there getting doctors telling us how wonderful it was, et cetera. Now we know that that's no good. And we have accepted that the economic benefits to the tobacco industry far outweigh, or sorry, are not worth the health risks and a whole bunch of other benefits or risks that are associated with smoking. So there are instances like that also with the economy and the environment. The good news is, and I think the city has been a leader in helping show this, there are incredible number of instances where doing things that are good for the environment are also extremely good for the economy. And in fact, many jurisdictions that pass aspirational motions like this also are taking leadership and saying, let's find those economic sectors and nurture those economic sectors that actually that help the economy and also help the environment. So short answer is, yes, there are some conflicts, but the good news is that there are many, many other positive things where there are no conflicts.
And my only other comment to you would be that I think the city, as a leader, is actually picking up on all those positive aspects, and we're really doing our very best to do that. I don't think we need the constant prodding of we're not doing enough for the environment. That's the problem I have.
And I think that this what's in front of you is an aspirational motion that essentially sends a nice signal out to the world, to visitors coming to Toronto, to businesses that are wanting to set up shop here. Hey, we're willing to just go on record and say these things matter. And I have heard repeatedly from my colleagues in other jurisdictions that increasingly it's how the environment in urban areas, the kind of so-called natural environment, that is increasingly becoming a business decision about where companies locate and don't locate. So from purely an economic perspective, there's no downside in sending a clear signal to the world, we care about these things.
Okay, I just think we've sent that signal, but thanks.
Thank you, Councillor DeGiorgio. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman, through you to the mayor, are you suggesting now that the world views Toronto in a fashion where it is that we're not protecting the environment? That's not what I'm hearing you say.
No, not at all.
And you're saying with this aspirational request that the intent is to collaborate, collapse all the things that the city is doing, because it would be my submission to you that many of what is stated here, the city is already doing. Mm-hmm. It may not be codicil in the fashion that you're asking for it, but so my question would be, what would be the harm in allowing the opportunity for our staff to review and to look at any additional component parts that could be added to this aspirational desire, which, as we've stated, we're well on our way with respect to wanting to protect the environment. I know you've worked in my area and so on and so forth, understanding our concerns. So the question is, what would be the harm in terms of having our staff reviewing this document and maybe to add more to it?
If the committee decides to be, I would consider it extraordinarily prudent.
Which is part of our job.
Which I appreciate, and if the committee decides that the review done by lawyers in Hamilton or staff in Hamilton and Vancouver and other cities are, you need to do that, there it is. To quote you, there is no harm. However, I do urge that the committee bring this back. There are many ways to do that. One could be to have them report back to the next, send this off to council. I don't know what the concerns are. Therefore, it's difficult to say whether or not this is something that takes half an hour or 5 days. I suspect it's closer to the half an hour. If this doesn't get sent to council with the staff to report on any potential problems, then I would ask the committee to make it time specific to make sure that this comes back to committee in a short number of months.
Right. The question was asked, I believe, by the mayor to Mr. Mula, and understanding your expertise in the environmental area and so on. The question, I believe, was asked, did other of the 52 municipalities who have approved this aspirational initiative, whether or not there was any review by staff and so on. I think that's what I understood. Are you aware of any?
I am not. I've got my hands full here in Toronto.
That's an interesting thing that would be absent.
Absolutely.
Either you or Mr. Mula not having that information.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's something that, as Dr. Mula said, he can get that information to the committee in a very short period of
Surprising
time.
that you wouldn't have it here, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other members of the committee wishing to ask questions of Mr. Hartman? If not, I have a couple. Mr. Hartman, first of all, thank you very much for being here. And by the way, I would just say to you, the standard of being extraordinarily prudent, I think is a good standard to have when you're making public policy. But let me ask you this question. If it's an aspirational motion, which you and Professor Mula both said, would you agree with me there's really no harm done to take a period of time, and I think it's going to be a bit more than a half an hour, but to take a period of time to just confirm that it is aspirational, and more importantly, that it's not in conflict with, for example, existing policies that are on the books or things like that? If it's aspirational only, then is there any harm to be done in having that examination by staff?
As I said to Councillor Thompson, no, there's no harm. And if that's where this is leading, and it comes back to this committee, and then eventually comes to council in a reasonable amount of time, there's no harm. The signal that we're trying to send is that this is non-controversial. And Mr. Mayor, if I may just presume you asked about question 4 to Dr. Mula about whether or not anything in here is in conflict with, if I'm understanding you correctly, existing city policy. One can go through almost every one of these items and point to a city activity or city process in place that is doing this. And it's, in other words, the A to I, for all intents and purposes, are at a 40,000 feet level, describing many city activities. Again, if this committee is happier with the staff report coming back, then so be it.
Thank you. And just another question, just back to your, what did you call it, a model or a
thought experiment?
A thought experiment. Yeah. If there was a Bill of Rights on the economy here, and say it dealt, as you specifically mentioned, with property rights, would you be, in fact, possibly here telling us as a deputant that it's prudent for us to sort of refer the matter of how property rights might, for example, have some impact on environmental policy as a part of an economic Bill of Rights, and saying we should check with our lawyers on that just to make sure it wasn't going to, for example, interfere with environmental initiatives the city might be taking? Might you be here telling us that we should have our lawyers check on that?
It's not impossible. However, my thought experiment was a way of making the point that this is at such a high level. I think that the jurisprudence in Canada is such that property rights are guaranteed within particular parameters. That was just to make the point that this is at such a high level that people would not consider it controversial. But I take the point. If this committee decides it's important to get lawyers to look over it 1 or 2 times, as long as it comes back in a timely manner, no downside.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Anybody else on the committee? If not, I'll say thank you very much for being here today, and I appreciate it very much. That would bring us then to, by the way, is Mr. Sharkey come back into the room, or did he? Okay. Then the next would be Jerry Dunn from Stop Line 9 in Toronto. Mr. Dunn here? Okay. Mr. Dunn doesn't seem to be here. Josephine Gray, St. Jamestown Community Co-op Lift. Ms. Gray? Josephine Gray? All right. And Gus Scarlatakis. Thank you, Mr. Skarlatakis. Welcome this morning, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Gus Skarlatakis. I'm a former elementary school teacher of 5 years of mathematics and science and technology. I have since been a successful real estate salesperson for the past 6 years, employed for Canada's own Sutton Group, founded in BC back in the 80s, which really paved the way in reshaping the real estate brokerage industry of today. And most recently, I hold the position of President and CEO of Alpha Developments, a leading residential real estate development firm. We strive to build better-than-code houses that have excellent energy conservation performance and are built to last, not disposable. I've lived in Toronto all my life. I'm married to a lovely wife whom works for our own fine province of Ontario in the Ministry of Environment Division, who is actually receiving a prestigious Amethyst Award this Thursday for her great work in forming the framework for the new Green Bonds program coming soon to all of us. We have 2 young boys, aged 4 and 3 months, who, along with my wife, are my everything in life, and I want the best for them. And I'd just like to go on the record and state that unequivocally she did not send me here today. I'm wholly here on my own volition. I've actually been keeping her up to date of Canada's eventual passing of our right to a healthy environment, and I say eventual passing. First off, I was surprised months ago when I learned of this movement. I was surprised to learn that we don't even have this as Canadians in our own Charter of Rights in the first place. This is basic. This should already be here, and that's why I'm here. I'm just one vote. While I'm a member of a National Association of Green Agents and Brokers, a green real estate association, I'm also a developer and, frankly, a seeker of profits. That is my main driving force behind my business. And as a developer and active realtor, I can state that modern, well-built, and energy-efficient homes are absolutely getting more bang for their buck in terms of sales prices and construction costs. I'm going with that. What I mean is there is money in being green. However, as a realtor, and I'm sure all of you councillors agree, real estate has been an excellent source of income and growth for all of us over the past 20 years. Well, guess what? It has been land that has really been skyrocketing over the years, and not real estate. We seem to think of real estate as the houses and buildings. It really isn't. It's the land that these buildings sit on. It's the land that has really taken off. Now, I just haven't prepared all that much, but I would like to say that I'm very confident that this is going to eventually pass. I think the big picture is we're starting on a municipal level. Clearly, it's running through the country. Municipalities are passing this left, right, and center. I would hope that Toronto would be, as big as we are, I would hope that Toronto would be at the forefront, not the rear of the pack in passing this. I would love to see us being leaders. 50,000 signatures thus far. How many no's? I mean, there's not a lot of people signing no here. We have 50,000 because we asked 50,300, probably. It's a matter of the momentum's great. As for your thought experiment, I really agree with you. If we were to think of this as an economic Bill of Rights, yes, we have to look at the environment. Absolutely. You have to look at you have to weigh this out, study it carefully, and I do like to say, end in the quote of Mark Twain, buy land, they don't make it anymore. I would rather change, protect land, they don't make it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skarlatakis, and good luck with that new young member of your family. Are there any questions by outside members of council not on the committee of Mr. Skarlatakis? Any questions on the part of members of the committee? All right, well, on that note, then, we'll say thank you very much for being here this morning. Much appreciated. That would then bring us to speakers on the matter from outside of the council. If there are any members of council here who are not members of the committee who wish to speak to this matter, and we have Councillor Layton. I apologize. Did we? No, we didn't have that. You're right. We had deputants, questions of deputants, questions to staff. Quite right. So questions to staff, still probably the same speaker, that being Councillor Layton.
Thank you very much. To our clerks, I don't know who I would ask in clerks, but I don't think it's probably not critical. But to our let's say city manager, acting city manager. Hello, sir. The language used in this is aspirational. Do you think it would bind the city to any particular actions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's always prudent to take a look at these documents to ensure that they are both aspirational and have consequences that we might want to consider. So I don't think there's any harm in having staff look and weigh in on anything that we may not understand fully on this motion.
Do you foresee any problems, or do you see any problems in the way that it's been drafted that would necessarily commit the city to any financial commitment or beyond what we're already doing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there are some potential financial other implications of this, and that comes with making policy. All our policies have, to varying degrees, some implication for the disposition of staff resources and city assets. So yes, it probably does have some of that. Many of these are probably contemplated in documents and policies that we have and may not be inconsistent with our plans.
So number one, with City Council formally recognizing that people are part of the environment, there's a right to a health, to clean air, to drinking water. That's an aspirational statement. That doesn't commit the city to anything, correct?
It's a truly aspirational statement.
And then number two is that the city recognizes its responsibility to respect, protect, and fulfill and promote these rights. That's an aspirational commitment. That's not.
Again, as we get a little bit more detail into each one of these, especially number 4, you'll see that there's wording in there that may, upon reflection, have implications for the disposition of resources.
So the number 4 reads that City Council and its committees continue their work with residents and other experts.
Right.
So that's just reaffirming the work we're doing. That's not committing to anything in and above what we're currently doing, right? And then it lists off the things that we're doing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it says, "And actions that will take within its jurisdiction to fulfill their rights and continue to review and revise those targets to include." So I think prudence would say we look at this and see whether or not indeed that the statements are consistent with what we have set out to do, and give you some advice on that.
But the clause before that is that we continue the work that we're currently doing, not that we'd initiate any additional work. We continue work and review that work as it's done.
That's what it says.
So that wouldn't commit us to anything in and above what we're currently doing.
Well, the line of questioning suggesting that we're going to sort of look at each one of these in sequence and look to see whether or not it's all just pure continuation or whether or not it's something beyond that. That's the kind of consideration we'd like to do with some reflection and provide you with advice.
Okay. Then I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Other questions from members, not members of the Executive Committee? Okay, then, we're ready to move on. Yes. But just you'll be first on the speakers list then. I just want to see what there is here. That's fine. And I want to make sure there were no other members outside that had questions of staff. And I see none, so you can be first on the list. Are there others? Councillor Berardinetti, Councillor McMahon. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Layton, I believe, Councillor Layton moved this motion, and he was quite enthusiastic in pointing out that these are all aspirational statements. Do you see any objection in clarifying this particular report by stating explicitly that it is an aspirational statement only?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have thought that that's a question for the author of the original resolution. I certainly don't have any objections to characterizing it as aspirational. It is indeed aspirational in its overall character. What I was trying to provide you with some advice on is what may be the consequences of those aspirations on city operations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We then have Councillor Berardinetti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to staff. And I think Mr. Baxter was in here earlier. I'm not sure. Jim's still here. Great. So I did speak with staff. I spoke with you about this, and I think that you would be fine if this was referred to staff for a review and to report back in the fall. Is that correct?
If that's what we're directed to do, we'd be happy to do that.
Okay, and what is your feedback and your experience with the intention of this motion and with the current work that the city's done on the environment?
I think with respect to the intent of the motion, I think we are busy doing a number of these elements right now. I think when you look at the recognition that we've received over the last couple of years for work that we've done with respect to, as we heard earlier, green roofs and energy retrofit initiatives and resiliency work that we're doing, I think we're being recognized for that. And I think that what's proposed here is just a continuation of that. I think it's just the specifics, as Mr. Libby has pointed out, that we need to address.
Okay, and do you feel that the city's been a leader on environmental issues?
I firmly believe that we are.
And we've been given awards,
We have.
and you wouldn't be opposed to an environmental Bill of Rights as what the province has done, but you'd like to look at this further and feel that other city staff and other departments should look at this as well
That's the case.
and provide feedback?
Yeah.
Great, okay, thank you.
That brings us next then to Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. So this is to City Legal. Have you been able to speak to the 5 municipalities, their legal teams, about the wording for their environmental Bill of Rights? In Ontario, sorry.
It's my understanding, Councillor, that we haven't had an opportunity to do our due diligence on this language. There was mention in the deputations about a number of municipalities being involved, and what we would normally do is to review the circumstances surrounding those adoptions and talk to the staff involved. We haven't had an opportunity to do that.
So you have not had an opportunity, sorry. So you would, your next course of actions, if this is not passed today, adopted today, you would speak to the 5 municipalities in Ontario, or you would just talk to some of the 52 across Canada?
I think we would do a canvas probably of the ones that were identified across Canada would be helpful, I would think, not just Ontario.
But overall, just at first glance, taking a look at this, your thoughts? Does it scare you off?
Well, I mean, in terms of an aspirational statement as a general concept, that doesn't raise a legal issue too much. It's really the devil's in the details, the specific wording involved, and what the background is to the wording that's being used here.
Were you involved around for the pesticide debate?
No.
I wasn't personally involved with that one. I think Mr. Rempe is here who was involved.
Just wondering, I know that back in that era, legal was worried about the bylaw that was passed, but it was passed. Were you worried about that at the time? Was that you?
I believe we
Do you remember?
supported the bylaw, but
Yeah, in the end.
If it's of any assistance through you, Mr. Chair, we were involved with the bylaw after the Hudson decision from the Supreme Court of Canada. We were directed to draft a bylaw, and I don't think there was any concern about that. We did draft the bylaw. It went in place. It was challenged right away. We defended it.
Okay.
And so on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Other members of the committee? Again, if not, I have a question to ask of, I think it's probably legal staff. Is there a possibility in what is described as an aspirational statement that use of the words like shall take cost-effective measures or will take within its jurisdiction actions could be something that's worthy of examination by legal to ensure that it doesn't create a legal obligation of some kind on the city to do anything in particular. Is that something you would?
Those are the types of statements we'd want to review.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions of staff, we'll move on to speakers from outside of the committee, and I'm assuming Councillor Layton, you would like to speak, and you're most welcome.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'll try to be brief, as I know you still have quite a bit on the agenda. I didn't think when I drafted this resolution, because it had been already done in so many other municipalities, that there would be any contention here. Other municipalities have passed this. It's a declaration. We went through it very carefully with clerks to make sure that there was no financial considerations. I'm fully aware that that would have sparked a debate, so we made sure that that was taken out. We made sure that there was no binding commitments. What we instead wanted to do was point out to the great things we're doing, and we listed them. And we did our best to make it as unanimous as possible, so that it simply was that declaration to join the chorus of 52 other municipalities representing tens of millions of Canadians across the country, so that we all could say and stand in unison as we recognize the importance of our environment on public health. I'm still surprised that while there are members of staff saying, well, we want to look at it more, no one can actually point to where they have a serious concern. And there's, oh, we might have one about this, we might have that. Well, that hasn't come up yet. And because this thing's been shopped around, it's been put around to other municipalities. So I can read the tea leaves here. There are those that are suggesting that it needs to be referred back. I personally don't think so. We've received 2,500 emails in just the past 2 weeks. Imagine if we thought this was going to be contentious and really put a drive out for it. We could have had people swinging from the rafters in here demanding this. I don't think we should shy away from good, strong declarations as a municipality. I think we need to show leadership in that. I think we need to put a very clear position forward to the other levels of government and around the world, so that our reputation is a strong one in that we're living up to our international and our local commitments. And then I hadn't seen these, but I was reading through these letters that we got today from Amy, from Isabel, from Ella, from Rio, from Kate, from Thomas, and from Emmett, from what is actually in my ward, and I didn't know existed, the Eco Club at Montrose Public School. These are elementary school students that have all written in, and if you'll read through, they're actually all, they've all written something a little bit different about why they think we should be making this bold and important statement. And it strikes me that they, like I thought, that this would be an easy commitment for the municipality to make, because it doesn't bind us in 6 or 7 different ways. We make decisions consistently at City Council that are against the advice of legal staff right in front of us there, and we still make those decisions. This notion that there might be a problem or could be this, even though we've had a couple of weeks, other municipalities have passed it, no one can put their finger on it. I just don't think we need to shy away from it, but I can read the tea leaves, and I hope that someone on the committee will, if not, try to put forward the motion right away. We'll put a time commitment on it. The fall sounds like a while. It also sounds like it's after a federal election and all the platforms are polished and put forward. So it'd be great to see if we could get it a little bit earlier. I know we've passed on some cell phone numbers of the municipal solicitors from other jurisdictions. Maybe we can do it a little bit quicker. But I do hope that it comes back very quickly if it's not passed today, so that we can make this statement and hopefully move on to look for policies that can actually make this statement even stronger and bolder.
Thank you, Councillor Layton. Any other members outside of the committee who wish to speak? All right. That would then bring us to the members of the committee. And did I understand, Councillor Berardinetti, you wanted to speak first? And I think you had your name on the list. I had Councillor Menon Wong, and then I have Councillor McMahon, right? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So I'll be moving a motion that this item be referred to the city manager and appropriate staff for consideration and report back to the executive committee in the fourth quarter. So it will be in the fall. So it does have a time frame on that for a report back, and also will be vetted by the city manager and legal and our environment office, and for them to report back. I think that it is important, and that's why it needs a more thorough review. I don't think there's any resistance or reluctance to support this initiative. It exists at the province, it exists in other municipalities. So I have not heard from anybody that there's a reluctance to support a strong initiative. The issue is that it is an initiative, and it's something that needs a review, and that I don't think that we need to be doing anything on the fly, and if something that is so important should be reviewed. So I think that that's what I've heard from other members of the executive, and in my feedback from city staff, that they feel that something of this nature deserves a thorough review. So many of these initiatives are initiatives that we're already taking as a leader in this city on environmental issues. So it's something that I think it's important for our staff to acknowledge the work that we've already done and the work that we're continuing with, and how this feeds into that if we are to declare an environmental Bill of Rights. I think that, and I appreciate the councillors that brought it forward. Councillor Layton is a member of the Environment Committee, and also with Councillor de Beer-Maker as the tree advocate, and he's always been strong on those issues. It's wonderful to see that we have, and I think many members that I know, many members of council strongly support these initiatives, but we're also doing them. So I think that we do deserve to hear back from staff, and it's something that they're ready and prepared to do and delve into and make sure that the wording makes sense, and we'd want to hear back from them. So I'll be asking that it does come back to the executive committee for us to debate this further, and we'll see a report and feedback from staff at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berardinetti. I have next Deputy Mayor Denzel Minnan-Wong.
Thank you. I'm supporting Councillor Berardinetti's deferral, and I'll say why. Nobody wants to be against the environment. This much is clear. However, the devil's in the detail, and the written word is very important, and the consequences of adopting something that we don't completely understand the implications of are significant. So while we don't want to be against the environment, in here it says that we support responsibly increasing density. Now, I don't know what that means. But if I went to my community and told them that I voted to increase density in my community, they might have something to say about that. Prioritize walking, cycling, and public transit as preferred modes of transportation. People in my community aren't so keen on things like scrambles and such things like that. They think they cause congestion. And, you know, if we adopt this, does this say that we give priority against cars to create more congestion? Reducing solid waste and promote recycling and composting. At some point in time, we're going to have a report back from the Public Works Committee on what we're going to do with our garbage, and that might mean waste energy. And, you know, if we adopt this, does the city staff come back and say, well, you know, you can't do that because this says this? Ensuring infrastructure and development projects protect the environment, including air quality. What does that do to the building industry, and what are the extra costs that put on our residents? I certainly don't know. City Council direct the city manager to include environmental and health impacts when evaluating reasonable and foreseeable costs, proposed actions, policies, and programs. Well, does that mean hiring extra staff? And, you know, what does that mean with every single initiative that we're going to do? A lot of questions to ask. It's a fairly complicated thing. It's nice to support the environment. I support the environment. I don't think anyone's opposed to the environment. However, a lot of unanswered questions that need certainly a lot of clarification before we sign off on something like this that we might be held accountable for in every single thing that this city does.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That brings us to Councillor McMahon.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to take a chance and stir up those tea leaves a bit by moving the recommendations. Councillor Matlow, or Councillor Layton. Sorry, Councillor Layton. First, I'd like to give a shout out to the Montrose Public School children. I think that's brilliant and fantastic. They are our future leaders and Eco Crusaders. I used to run the Eco Tigers program at my kids' school, Gladiola Public School, back in the day, and it's great to get kids involved in helping change their world, change their neighborhood, because it matters to them being the most vulnerable. 52 other municipalities stuck their neck out in Canada already. Toronto the Green, we want to regain that reputation that we've lost over the last 4 years. We stuck our necks out over the pesticide bylaw. The sky didn't fall. We appreciate advice of our expert city staff. We appreciate that. But, you know, and I appreciate that people are exceptionally prudent or prudent in general. I can respect that. I would argue it's largely symbolic. Waiting till October is not the end of the world. It's much better than nothing, and it's a huge improvement over our last regime. So, but I will be voting for it today. Sometimes I feel we analyze things to death here, and we should just do.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Other members of the committee wishing to speak? Councillor Shiner.
Mayor Tory, I think many of the initiatives in here are ones that we should strongly support, and they're rights that we should all expect to have, and I appreciate the fact that this is in front of us. I think sending it off to committee to staff, as my colleagues have suggested, is right, but I think if we're going to adopt statements, we have to be very clear as to what we really mean by them. And one that I circled is prioritize walking, cycling, and public transit as a preferred mode of transportation. It's getting a little gray, it's getting a little thin, and as I join the older crowd and you see more of the seniors around the city, tell me, is my father going to cycle off at 90 years old to his doctor's office? Am I going to get him a tandem bike so his caregiver can ride him there? Is the plumber going to show up at his house with a new toilet, with a bicycle, with a toilet on the back of the bike? Or is he going to walk it over from the subway station? How are the seniors that depend on the lifts and the drives around the city, those people with disabilities, those people with all types of their physical disabilities or walking disabilities, going to deal with that? Go out to the suburban parts of Toronto, which are no longer suburban, and tell me if you can really survive out at McNichol Avenue and Warden on a bike, and that's the way you're going to get around, or out in Weston Road, or even parts of Willowdale. It's not going to happen. Those communities have to have, and the people that live in there have to have, a different type of access and ability to get around than just saying walking, cycling, and public transit as preferred modes and giving them priority, because you can't do that. And what I go back to then is the character of the city and the different areas and the needs that are there in the different areas with different people are quite diverse. It's a huge range of people that depend on us right across the city. So although a statement like that may work down at the corner of Spadina and King, where I spent many years down there, and I can hop on public transit, ride a bike, park around the corner, and many of the people that live down there could do that, or out in the beaches where it's wonderful, or areas along Bloor Street and communities around the city that are great to do that in. It's not everywhere. And there are more areas in the city that you can't prioritize walking, cycling, and public transit, places that just don't have the ability, and people that don't have the ability to reach those areas. So I think it's extremely important that we do exactly what we're saying. Send it back to staff to try and bring some definition to what we're really saying, so we're not just making a statement that makes you feel good, but you're making recommendations that you can act on and bring something real to what you're trying to do here. And I think that's the important part of setting it off, and I hope to get definitions on or some support for those different areas and some understanding of the difference in the city when it comes back, so we can deal with that in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Shiner. Any other members of the committee? If not, I'd like to just say a word on this. First of all, Councillor Layton, I want to thank you and Councillor de Baeremaeker for bringing this forward, and I think it was properly sent here, and I do believe it is the proper thing to do to support what Councillor Berardinetti is suggesting. I'll leave her motion as it is. I would be even happy if it said not later than the fourth quarter, or, you know, so that it was meant to say as early as this work could be done. But, and I think aspirational statements are fine. In fact, they're to be encouraged. But aspirational doesn't mean meaningless. You know, because if it's meaningless, you wouldn't be bringing it here. And if it's meaningless, the other municipalities wouldn't have adopted it. And so I think we have to, I think as prudent decision-making, you know, we should be making sure we understand what it is we're passing. I'll be honest, in my short time here, I've sort of seen the degree to which people are prepared to pass things and put forward resolutions for votes and so on without asking the questions that should be asked, because what then happens, of course, is you end up with these things on the record that somebody will later say, well, no, we didn't really mean that, or it wasn't really meant to be overriding of something else or whatever, when in fact it should have been thought about beforehand. I happen to think aspirational statements are even better if they're accompanied by targets, and that both, but you know, both targets and aspirational statements don't mean much if not accompanied by will. And I would refer us collectively to the targets we set on affordable housing, not met, not even close. The targets we set on waste diversion, not met, not even close. And when I say we, I wasn't here, but they were set years ago. And in the absence of will, you could have even their specific targets and aspirational statements about why those two things were and are important, but in the absence of will, it becomes kind of meaningless. And I will say, and I don't mean to be disrespectful of the other 52 municipalities or the 50,000 people, or the fact you could have had people, as I'm sure you could have, swinging from the rafters. To me, if it was 152 municipalities and 350,000 people, and you had people in here swinging from the rafters, I still would be saying that when there are words in a statement like shall do this or will do that, I take that as being meaningful. If it says the City Council shall do something in the event of certain facts arising, then I would say we should be careful when we're passing that, because we are putting something in place that says we shall do something. And I think you would even agree with me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, I wouldn't try, but that when it says we shall do something, you would want it to mean something, that we shall do something, or we will do something. Because otherwise it does become not aspirational, but rather it becomes meaningless. And so I think, to use the words of one of our deputants, you know, that we demonstrate what he called extraordinary prudence is just ordinary prudence. Just to ask a few of those questions, to check in with a few of the other municipalities. I mean, it is of more than passing interest to me that 52 other municipalities have passed it. And I would want to just confirm with a few of them, as our solicitor said they would, that you looked at this, you had no problem with it. How's it been since you've had it in place? Have there been any ill effects from that, or what do we call it, conflicting policies? And I think that is just prudent. There is a time limit that's proposed here. And finally, as has, I think, even you said, a number of others have said, in the meantime, all the good work we're doing carries on. If it stopped good work, or if it was a never land thing where it was going to come back in 3 years, I would have a concern, because I want you to know from me, certainly in terms of my own casting of my own vote on this, there is no intention of bad faith whatsoever. If this is an aspirational statement, and I've read it more than once, and our people sort of say it's not been trouble elsewhere and it shouldn't be trouble for us, then I'll be quite happy when this comes back to say, let's be bold. But if we're being bold, then we can't say it's meaningless. It's either bold or it isn't. If it's bold, then it requires a little bit of prudence to have our staff and our lawyers look at it to make sure bold doesn't mean conflicting with existing policy, or bold doesn't mean something we'll regret later by not taking the care. And so to me, that is why this is the right way to do this, to have the staff look at it, to have a date on it, and to then have it come back here for consideration. And we'll welcome you back at that time, obviously, to talk on the report that we get from our staff. And if frankly, as far as I'm concerned, if it can be done sooner, bring it on. We have meetings going on here in all the other months, and if the work can get done, then and the other municipalities say no problem, this is a piece of cake, then I'm happy to have them feed that back to us. So those would be my comments. Are there any other members of the committee wishing to speak? Otherwise, we would move to consider the amendment first. No one else to speak? Okay. On the amendment, then, it's moved by Councillor Berardinetti, the item be referred to. Actually, it isn't the amendments, it's the item itself, referring it, the motion to referred to City Manager and appropriate staff for consideration and report back to the Executive Committee in the fourth quarter of 2015. All those in favour? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Layton, and thank you to the members of the committee and the staff. All right. Now, in the midst of all this, if I can just find the agenda.
Sorry, Mayor Tory.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, Mayor
Yes.
Tory. I held the first item, 6.1 on Casa Loma. I have what I think is a quick motion. I've talked with staff about it. I just wondering if I can move it as a quick item, since
I'm always in favor of quick items, Councillor Ainsley, so.
it's just that City Council, sorry if I can have it on the screen. The City Council requests the Board of Casa Loma to strongly encourage Liberty Entertainment Group to rejoin Toronto Public Library's Museum Access Program. Museum Access Program Meritori has been in place since 2007. One of the goals of the public library system is to encourage and support our culture and arts sector. So the Museum Access Pass is sponsored by Sun Life Financial. It provides...
All right. Now it's going to be held, and it's been held already, so we'll just continue with the hold that Councillor Ainsley had on it, and I guess we'll deal with it, in due course. Okay, thank you. We'll be coming back to it, I think, pretty shortly anyway, because we're just about done with the items that had deputations. In fact, there's 2 more. So we'll come back to that. So next, that would bring us then to item 6.20, flexible work arrangements, and Mr. Miroslav Glavich is here, and will... You're not speaking on this one? All right. Then, was there anyone else who had questions of staff or wished to speak from outside or inside the committee on 6.20, because we're only holding it because of the deputants? If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve item 6.20. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Then, Mr. Glavich, the next item was 6.22. This was the experiential learning for school-aged children. Where did you go? Did you wish to speak to that, sir? All right. You know the rules, sir. 5 minutes are yours.
What Councillor Pasternak is... What? Okay. What Councillor Pasternak wants, which is a good idea. Councillor Ainsley. Yoo-hoo. Okay. The Toronto Library has the MAP program, what he just, Councillor Ainsley spoke about, what Councillor Pasternak wants to do, which is a good idea. If you do it, it's kind of like a duplication of what the public TPL is doing with the MAP program. I sent Councillor Pasternak an email about it about a week ago. Councillor Robinson should know, she was and Palacio were there when it opened. It's a great program. I don't know if you want to look into the TPL's MAP program, which is a great program, which kind of covers what he wants. You can just expand it instead of doing duplication, the city having its own so-called MAP program, and the library doing duplication is a bad thing, it's a waste of money. And Councillor Ainsley can speak about it if you ask him nicely about the library's MAP program. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the deputant from members outside or inside the committee? All right, hearing none, I'll thank you very much, sir. Are there any questions of staff or people wishing to speak to item 6.22? All right, we have speakers. We have Councillor Robinson to speak, and so the floor is yours.
Yeah, so as much as I appreciate Councillor Pasternak's initiative here, I have a few concerns about it, and I'm putting forward a motion. And if you want to take carriage of the you're welcome to. But this is one of my hall. There are programs like this, as we heard from our deputant, in play. And what I'd rather do is for us to take a step back and look at this in a way to see what we're currently doing. I have to tell you, formerly being in economic development, and I think there's staff here from that division, a lot of these attractions, destinations, galleries, museums are already doing this type of thing. A lot of them are already providing busing. I know the Toronto Botanical Gardens does it, and I wish I had more examples, but that's exactly my point. We don't know what's happening currently or what's existing. So instead of diving in and creating another staff team of 12 people to do all this, why don't we just assess what's happening in the city, take that step back and review what we're currently doing and what the attractions industry is doing, because I think actually they're already doing a great job. Coupled with formerly being Councillor Ainsley and I on the library board, as Miroslav has described, the library is already doing an extensive program around this. So I would just love the support for this motion just so that we do this right and look at what we're doing across the board, talk to the various attractions, and groups? Because I know, I wish I could cite some examples. Like, for instance, I believe the AGO, I'm not going to say this right because I don't have the information in front of me, but the AGO has free access and admission after certain hours for teenagers. Now we're doing free TTC for under 12. So I just wanted us to take a step back and review this in greater detail before we dive in with the motion that's before us from Councillor Pasternak. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. I didn't have any other people to speak. Might I assume you wish to speak, Councillor Pasternak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are existing programs in which various communities and individuals and families can access discounted.
I was told just to, so we do that, do you have a motion? Because I want to make sure if you did, you put that first.
do.
Or, yeah. So you may want to just put that first. Oh, it's coming from somewhere else?
I'll move it. It's just a report back here rather than, report back to CDR rather than here.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
And
Carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
I actually would, if through you to the clerk, if regarding Councillor Robinson's motion, rather than delete what's here, we could, an inventory of what exists could be part of this package. And that I would not have an objection to. But there's a big difference. I just want to differentiate. There's a big difference between people who are heading to attractions and are looking for an opportunity to reduce some of the costs, either via transportation or the pass program through our various libraries, which I understand are raffled off on Friday afternoons. And there's enormous high demand for that, and of course there are other programs. Those are people who are already plugged in to experiential learning, going to these attractions, and leveraging the great things that the city has to offer. Who we are not reaching are those who are not going at all, who are not being encouraged to go, who are not plugged in to the various opportunities that await them throughout the city, who are not having the push to explore. And that is the logic here, to have a more robust approach where we're actually grabbing people and saying, let's do this, hop on the bus, and we can have a great opportunity to introduce young people to science, through the Science Center, to art through our gallery network, through opportunities in other attractions as well, in the zoo, and other areas. So it's a more robust approach, not giving people necessarily the opportunity, not to lose the opportunity of getting discounts to where they're going anyway, but reaching into our strong neighborhoods and our emerging neighborhoods community to take people who are not in any way going. And that is the big difference between what Councillor Robinson is referring to, what exists now, and what we're trying to do with this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pasternak. I had, you already spoken, did you have a point of
I
order?
have a question of the mover.
Oh, fine, yes, indeed. Okay, please.
So do you feel, though, as a great first step is to do a full assessment and review of what's happening, not just from the city's perspective, but also from the attractions perspective, what they're doing and assessing that?
Yeah, no, I have no problem with incorporating as a friendly amendment, and if you want to make it item E, or to create an inventory of sorts of what's out there, and connecting the dots and making it all work.
Okay, and are you aware the public school system has a very comprehensive program in going to these various attractions as part of their, built into their curriculum and already funded?
I'm very aware that the public school system has a very robust program. Public schools are open half the year, and field trips are actually on the decline. The other thing I would say that our summer camp program also has some field trips and busing, but those are eligible for kids who are already registered inside our camp programs. So the question is there a group out there who are not plugged into these various opportunities who we must reach out to get them involved?
All children attend public school. I mean, everybody goes to public school, correct?
No, not everybody does go to public schools, as a matter of fact. There's a pretty robust private school system.
And they also have a similar curriculum.
Right,
Because
but
they have to follow a similar curriculum.
schools are open about 190 days a year, and a year is 365 days. So, and we want to reach those who are not going to these programs, not the ones who are already going.
All right, thank you, Councillor Robinson, and that, I think, brings us to Councillor Shiner.
I have questions of Councillor Pasternak. Sorry, Councillor Pasternak, so are you trying to expand the number of persons that have access to subsidized passes to go to these attractions?
Yeah, I don't think our reach is where it should be.
Sorry, so the answer is yes?
Yes.
Okay, so when we operate these attractions, we already provide a subsidized admission fee to them, and that fee is used to keep that facility open. So are you at all looking at the impact if you start to make it free or less of a lower cost? What we'll have to give to our colleague, Councillor Crawford, and the Parks Department to find the money to run them?
There's no doubt there's a financial impact, and that's why we want to take a look at this, to see what we're doing now and how our reach might be increased.
Well, there's two parts. What we're doing now is the first part, which I think is what my colleague, Councillor Robinson, was saying, and you're talking about, I think, how it can be increased. But you don't know the participation there now, do you?
We have some general statistics of our participation rate in the City of Toronto camp programs.
Right, but this is all talking about providing additional financial support for everything that you're talking about. And you said 190 days. That's the number of days they're in the classroom, right?
Yeah, the school...
So then I've got 104 days of weekends, so I'm already up to 294 days. There's only 365 days in the year. I've got, I think, 14 or 18 legal holidays. If I put the 18 on top, I'm up to 312 days. So we're talking a matter of the summer holidays.
I think
That's the time they're not in
I don't know.
classes.
I'm not sure what school year you're looking at, but the school year runs Monday to Friday with 2.5 weeks off in December, with about 9 professional development days, with 1 week off at March break, and then intermits there's statutory holidays, and of course most public schools
190 days isn't 190 consecutive days. That's the days when kids are actually in the classroom.
That's right.
So how many days are you required to have the staff at the city at work every year?
Well,
It would be close to that, would it not?
We have 52,000 employees,
Right,
of
but
which
they'd
we
be
have-
working around 190 or 200 days a year as well. They have the same.
Well, actually, we have city staff in their various divisions, 365 days a year if we include EMS, fire services, TTC.
Sorry, I think if you want to look at EMS or fire services, they work less than that number of days because they have compressed work weeks and 10-hour days and four-day work week compressed back to back, so they have 8 days they work and 2 weeks off.
Well, actually, we're moving to open our.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. Any other questions of the mover or those wishing to speak? If not,
Seeing as I
continuing
started
on.
some problems.
Do you have questions, Councillor Thompson?
No.
To speak.
To speak. Councillor Thompson to speak.
Well, I
Thank you.
was just going to put some comments down as well, but I can follow my colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to move to amend Councillor Robinson's motion to add the library to that. And I simply wanted to say that, in some cities in North America, and I suspect around the world, people are able to visit museums and galleries and so on at no charge. And clearly, the programs that we have put in place to assist those who are in need, it is something that has merits. However, I think that it's also a system that is and can be abused. It's a system that I see where folks will get tickets and actually not use them. And also, when we talk about the initiatives that that we see in the city where we attempt to help, sometimes we actually put those who are trying to help at a disadvantage, interestingly enough. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes there's a reliance on a government to ensure that we offer programs to help those who are in need. And yes, that has merits, but sometimes it's not well received. And so I think that it's important for us to review what we do, which is well intended, to ensure what our intentions were is still in fact valid, and it's worthy of continuity. And so I think that it is public resources that we are utilizing, and I think that that's always subject to be reviewed. So I join the course and the motion that Councillor Robinson has put forward to review this particular process. I think it's something that's necessary for us to do. So I make that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I had Councillor Shiner then to speak.
So I do appreciate what my colleague, Councillor Pasternak, is trying to do when he sees people that may be able to or may appreciate going off to some of the opportunities or attractions in the city that are available and don't know how to get to them. And I think I commend that part of his wish list over there, and I didn't mean to give him a really hard time on it, which I might have, so no disrespect. But I guess I'm somewhat frustrated in the fact that there's nothing that's free in the city. That every time you provide something that's subsidized, you got to have a subsidizer. The subsidizer then becomes the taxpayer, the person that has to foot the bill at the end of the day. And I also appreciate what my colleague, Councillor Thompson, has said, because he's experienced when people have given passes or tickets and they've been passed on or sold to others. Many of you that might have been here for a while recall we used to have a box at the Skydome for the baseball games, and we all got it once a year. So I'd give my tickets off to the youth shelter, which I serve on the board of, because I thought it would be great if they actually had an opportunity to go to a baseball game, and we provide a little bit of food and entertainment. So one year I was quite surprised when this couple walked into the booth with a couple of tickets they had bought from a kid outside who was scalping them. Because they didn't go themselves, they sold the tickets. So in future years, we made sure that the staff at the youth shelter took and brought the youth over that actually wanted to go, because they took advantage of something that they thought was free to them and they sold it. And they misused and abused the opportunity that was there to have that assistance and come to an event over there. And that's happening to some extent with some of the passes that are out there. So I think what Councillor Robinson has said is right. Let's take a look at what we're doing first. And taking a look at what we're doing, we also take a look at how we could do it better. When you take a look at how you can do it better and get that information out, then that will be available for all of us to pass on to our constituents. And if we find that there are shortcomings in it, we'll address it in the manner we generally do, by saying we'd like to have these changes, and we'll look at it through the budget process and leave it with our colleagues there to try and figure out how you pay for it. We'll do it up front, we'll do it fairly, and we'll do the best job we can. So I'm supporting my colleague Councillor Robinson initiative, and by that I'm supporting, I think, my colleague Councillor Pasternak and his wish to see more people go out to the facilities.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. Others wishing to speak? All right, others wishing to speak? Everybody said what they need to say. Thank you. Then we would move to the three motions we have here, three amendments, and the main motion. The first is the motion 3, moved by Councillor Thompson, which is to amend motion 1 by Councillor Robinson to include libraries in Part A.
Mr. Mayor, I will have to recuse myself from this one.
Oh,
So,
ironic.
so you'll have to do the vote without me.
Please, if you'll excuse yourself, we'll proceed. And
Add the word library to everything here?
Go right out of the circle.
all right, as Councillor
Filling up libraries.
Pasternak departs, I will ask for all those in favor of the amendment. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Then we have motion number 1 as amended by just now. This is the motion moved by Councillor Robinson, which you see in front of you. All those in favor? I'm sorry?
Sorry,
Libraries is in now, I guess, so does that mean he'd have to?
Library's in, so you can't vote on it.
no, Mr. Mayor, there was an earlier motion that did to the screen to refer this back to CDR.
That's the third,
You
yes,
have to do it in
the third motion.
Okay.
So I think, are you not going to, Councillor? It's, should ask questions or to speak to either the amendment that Councillor Mendenwong has put. Moved, all right, all those. Oh, you had a question?
I don't know what it is. Can you just elaborate a little bit further? I think I missed your elaboration.
So there's a group, this industry group, in terms of trying to cut red tape and improve the purchasing and contracting and getting more bids and all that type of stuff. So I want them to look at job order contracting, and what job order contract essentially does is many times vendors will bid on a project knowing that there's going to be a change of scope, that when they dig things up, they're going to find other things, and then they'll underbid the contract knowing that they're going to make plus, plus, plus. When they find all those additional things, and they'll be able to charge excessive rates. One of the things that job order contracting does is it sets fixed prices for any additional work that needs to be done. So let's say you need an extra door. So instead of them charging their full retail rates, there'll be a rate for how much time they'll be able to charge to put that door in and the price of that door.
How with job contracting, you determine, for example, I'll use union as an example. We recently, I think most of us have been for doors, and there was a wall, a separate area that they realized existed. In order to connections, they would have to build a platform to do that. How would you predetermine what the valuation would be for something?
That says it's a voluminous that has many different things. So a screw costs this much, a nail costs this much, and putting that nail to the wall, charge this price.
Okay, fair enough. So you've added, there is a
certain level of specificity to limit the city's liabilities in the circumstance, yes.
I get that. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Other questions of the mover of the amendment? Otherwise, if there are no speakers beyond that to the amendment, I'll ask for the question on the amendment. The amendment is moved by Councillor Mendenwong, which is about to appear, and there it is, that it modifies the appendix to include job order contracting as one of the issues for consultation. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That would then bring us to the main item as amended of 6.7, which we'll put up here. And that's just to receive the report, I guess, so is it? And am I right?
Yep.
It is. So we're just reading this. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. That then brings us back to item 6.1. And I think this was being held for Councillor Thompson and Councillor Ainsley, who's left, but...
And I had basically an amendment to Councillor Ainsley's motion. I gave it to staff. And simply what I'd like to do is refer the motion to staff to have further discussion with Liberty Entertainment Group. As I understand the matter, last year, some 4,000 people went through Casa Loma, and clearly this was at the benefit of a particular company who subsidized those who entered, and in fact, that is a challenge for the company who actually didn't really get the benefits, being Casa Loma or Liberty Entertainment. And what we're saying now is to encourage them to do. I think that there needs to be a discussion with our staff. So what I'm simply doing is referring the motion so that there could be some consultation and discussion with Liberty Entertainment to see if they can arrive at an agreement, if you will. So that's what the intent of my motion is.
All right, so if I understand this correctly, this is an amendment to the motion put by Councillor Ainsley to include this in the...
To refer his to staff.
Referring his to staff for the reasons you stated.
Yes.
All right. So there's a motion then to refer Councillor Ainsley's motion off to staff, right?
Right, and it is my intent that an outcome will be a positive one where both Liberty and the staff can agree on a formula which allows for, for people to enter and do get a benefit associated with the free passes, if you will.
All right. Are there any other people wishing to speak to Councillor Thompson's motion to refer this motion of Councillor Ainsley's off to staff for their comments and consultation with the Liberty Group? All right. If not, I'll call the question then on Councillor Thompson's motion to refer, and I'll ask for all those in favor. Opposed? Carried. And then we just have to adopt the report, the annual meeting and audited statements of Casa Loma for 2014. And I'll ask for a vote on that. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I believe that completes our business for today. And so it leaves you more time to go to your office and do constructive things on behalf of the people of Toronto. And I thank you very much for your attendance and for your cooperation today, and we'll see you shortly. Meeting is adjourned. Well done.